Welcome back to the channel. This new series, which we're starting today, is a response to a request that we should look at some short pieces, relatively straightforward pieces, which may in some cases also be set on the syllabuses of various organ exams, such as the Associated Board. And so the piece which we're going to start with, the piece we're looking at today, is an organ arrangement of Grieg, Opus 35 number 2, a piece which incidentally is famous throughout Norway as the theme tune to perhaps Norway's most popular television program. But in any event, it's a lovely piece, and we will look through it and see what performance issues there are and how we can make our performance better. So it's a straightforward enough piece with 3 sections. The beginning and the end section are the same, more or less. Gentle, elegant, dance-like pieces. And there's a middle section which is very wild and unrestrained. So there's a huge contrast between those 2 sections. And that's one of the things which we really have to bring out. There's a lot of dynamic markings here, ranging from P and PP in the opening and closing sections, right down to PPP, in fact, for the very final note, and F to FF in the middle section, together with some hairpin dynamics. One thing which I'm going to look at today is how we can cope with that if the organ which we're playing doesn't have the facility to do all those things. So I've chosen quite deliberately today to use this organ here in Finnsnes Church, which is a classical instrument with mechanical action, 2 manuals, no registration aids of any sort, and no swell pedal. There are shutters here, which you can see, but they are opened and closed by hand, so I can't use them for those hairpin dynamics. So that really restricts how I can respond to the various changes in dynamics, and that's one of the things which we're going to look at. I might also add that the opening section suggests being played on 2 manuals, but in fact it's perfectly possible to play both the hands on the same manual throughout that opening and closing sections, so that we can play the piece just on 2 manuals without any registration changes along the way. And we'll see how that works in due course. The really important thing is that we get the contrasts in the music right, and to some extent the registration, we do what we can with the instrument which we've got. We make the very best out of what we've got available, and that will always be understood in an exam context as well as in a concert performance context. There are tempo markings given, crotchet 76 I think it is for the opening section and 112 in the middle section. Those are actually Grieg's own numbers, so they are perfectly authentic, but we have to remember that Grieg wrote those for the piano. The piece was originally composed for piano duet, and therefore those tempi are intended for piano performance. Now, I think that 76 works fine on the organ for the opening section. 112 possibly might be too fast. Depends on the nature of the organ that you've got and the acoustic of the building that you're playing it in. And the really important thing here is that we respect and respond to, again, the instrument we've got and the room that we're playing it in. It's got to sound right, and that's more important than using exactly the metronome markings which are shown. So the really important thing to bring out here is that contrast between the elegant and melodic opening and closing and that really wild and unrestrained middle section. Provided that contrast is there and is as pronounced as it can be, then that is going to be the correct tempo, it's going to be right. So let's look at the music itself. This opening section has three distinct ideas, which are then repeated in their entirety. The first idea is a very light and bright, dance-like idea. It's a very happy, positive statement. It's likely that we will play it slightly flexibly so far as the tempo is concerned. So we won't be rigidly metronomic about it. We might want to just ease into it a little bit. The second phrase is a contrasting phrase. It's marked dolce, and we notice immediately that the phrases are more pronounced. The left hand contains binding notes, that's those long minims which hold the texture together, where the first section has staccato quavers in both the left hand and the pedal alternately. This second section has staccato crotchets in the pedals. So altogether we're feeling that where the first one was expressive from a distance, so to speak, we're moving in, we're getting very close for this second, this dolce phrase. There is something more legato, something more enveloping about it. The third phrase is a kind of rounding off phrase. It's still bright and cheerful. The pedal changes again to a double pedal, which has, instead of staccato marks underneath it, it has accent marks underneath each note. So what's the difference actually between those three pedal forms? You'll notice that the first one was staccato quavers, the second phrase was staccato crotchets, and the third one was accented notes. How can you make a difference between those three? How can there possibly be a difference, for example, between a staccato crotchet and a staccato quaver? Because staccato is just staccato. Well, if we look at music by the time of Grieg, of course it's different from 18th century music. 18th century music, if you get a dot under a note, it doesn't mean staccato in a modern sense. It just means that the note was accentuated, it was detached. It was to be regarded as something in its own right. But by the time we get to Grieg, staccato does mean more or less staccato. But I think there are different grades of staccato here, and the staccato quavers imply something like a plucked string on a cello. The staccato crotchets imply just that we are detaching the notes considerably, but not quite as short as the staccato quavers. And the accented notes, what's the difference between those and the staccato crotchets? Answer, not a lot. I think Grieg is really using the notation here to describe the content as much as anything else, that it's a kind of drone, it's a bit like a hurdy-gurdy kind of drone going on in the bottom, and he's using it just to say, look, this is a dong, 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 that we're just trying to get this repetitive kind of drone effect going on. So there's not a huge difference between that and the staccato crotchets from the previous phrase, but the difference is more one of intent and more of what's actually happening. It's kind of descriptive. But those three phrases, they want to contrast each other because they are rather differently intended. So one of the things which we would want to do, particularly in an exam context, is to demonstrate that we can differentiate between those three different styles in that opening section. And then there's that wild middle section. Like I say, the tempo marking is not necessarily going to be an exact quantity, but it just indicates that we're going basically as fast as is practicable to do with the instrument in the room. We want to leave people a little bit breathless, a little bit shocked after that rather elegant opening, where we suddenly dive into this section. And we notice that at the end of that section, it just runs into a wall and stops mid-flow. And then there's a dramatic pause. And then we start up again with the opening phrase. How long is that pause? Well, it's as long as works dramatically. So this is your chance to be an actor, your chance to express this element of surprise, this element of what's going to happen now? And a rather almost comical return to the elegant opening. And once again, as we return to that opening phrase, it's probably not going to be metronomic. You're going to just ease into it to make it work. The very final line of music is not an exact repeat of the last line of the first section. You'll notice there's some added sevenths in the left hand, and you've got to navigate getting the C sharps in the left hand to be repeated, but then to be held on. But that's just a case of working out what the notes actually say and how they work together. A piece to really, really have fun with and to be expressing something to the hearer. You want to leave the hearer amused and shocked in that middle section, and excited and content by this lovely expressive music.